840,000 people used Celo yesterday, and the same the day before that, and the day before that. And these aren't wallets someone spun up to farm an airdrop and then abandoned. These are real people, opening the app every single day to move actual money. That was the daily average through the entire first quarter of 2026, and it makes Celo the most used Ethereum Layer 2 in the world right now, ahead of Arbitrum, Base, and Optimism, the three names everyone actually knows. And you've probably never even heard anyone mention it. So why is that? A lot of it comes down to how we measure these networks. We usually rank them by how much money is sitting in their apps and how much gets traded each day. That's the scoreboard the big names built their reputation on, and it's the one most headlines follow. But if you rank them by how many real people show up each week and actually use them, the whole picture changes. Celo comes out on top, and it isn't close. And the further you look, the more surprising it gets. Since March 2025, $65 billion in stablecoins have moved through the network. Tether reviewed every chain carrying USDT and named Celo the #1 network in the world by weekly active users. 16 million people across Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia keep a wallet called MiniPay on their phone. And just last month, all of them gained access to a Visa card that lets them spend those stablecoins at 175 million stores worldwide. Even Vitalik Buterin, one of Ethereum's founders, called the Celo community one of the best examples of what crypto has to offer. So today we're digging into Celo, the coin built for people who've never had a bank account.
Zero hair, zero hedge.
Who actually built this? 3 people: Rene Reinsberg, Marek Olszewski, and Sepp Kamvar. And their backgrounds tell you a lot about why Celo points where it does. Rene studied at a European business school, earned an MBA at MIT, and then spent years at Morgan Stanley, McKinsey, and the World Bank. He lived right where global finance meets the developing world, so he understood this problem long before it ever became a startup. Marek grew up in Singapore, where his grandfather had helped plan the city in the 60s and 70s. He went to the University of Toronto and then MIT for a PhD in distributed systems, with internships at Google, Microsoft, and Sun along the way. Sepp studied chemistry at Princeton, earned a computational math PhD at Stanford, built a search startup that Google acquired in 2003, ran personalized search there, and later taught at the MIT Media Lab. In other words, these weren't 3 strangers who met online last week. They actually met at MIT, and in 2011 they founded a company called Loku that helped local businesses show up online. 2 years later, GoDaddy acquired it for around $70 million, and Marek stayed on as VP of Engineering. And this is the part that makes them interesting. They had already made it. They were wealthy, successful, with nothing left to prove. The easy choice would have been to step back and enjoy it. Instead, all 3 of them left and started over. So why? Because they had become fixated on one very specific idea and they couldn't let it go. Here it is. More than 1 billion adults around the world own a smartphone but have never had a bank account. And for them, moving money the traditional way is painful. Western Union charges 5 to 8% on an international transfer. So if you send $1,000 from the US to family in Kenya, about 80 of it disappears in fees before it even arrives. So they turned the question around. What if money simply worked on any inexpensive phone? What if you could send it to a phone number instead of a 42-character wallet address, pay a fraction of a penny to do it, and see everything priced in the currency you already use? If you could pull that off, you'd essentially be building a bank for the 2 billion people the financial system had always overlooked. They studied every blockchain that existed in 2017 to see if any of them could handle it. None could. They were too slow, too expensive, and far too complicated for someone who had never heard of crypto. So they made the bold decision to build their own chain from the ground up, designed for people without bank accounts rather than traders chasing the next big return. Early investors included Jack Dorsey, Coinbase Ventures, Polychain Capital, and a 16Z, which was a strong vote of confidence. Celo launched on April 22nd, 2020, which is Earth Day, and that was no accident. The network described itself as carbon negative from the very first block, and it launched with CUSD, a dollar-pegged stablecoin, as the main way people stored value on it. It was a clear statement about the kind of project this was meant to be. Now for its first few years, Celo ran as its own fully independent blockchain. Its own network, its own validators, its own security, all handled on its own. It worked, but securing an entire chain by yourself is expensive, and that cost never goes away. So, in July 2023, the team proposed something bold. Give up that independence and move Celo inside Ethereum as a layer 2. If that term is new to you, here's the simplest way to think about it. Ethereum is the largest and most trusted neighborhood in all of crypto. Becoming a layer 2 is like moving into that neighborhood instead of guarding your own house out on its own. Ethereum takes care of the security, and you get to stop worrying about it and focus entirely on what you do best. Arbitrum, Optimism, and Base already lived there, and Celo wanted in as well. With that, Celo cut security costs by 99% and slashed transaction times from 5 seconds down to just 1. So now that it's better, let's talk about whether it actually works in the real world. The clearest proof that any of this works is a product called MiniPay. Within 5 months, MiniPay passed 1 million users. By the end of 2025, it reached 13 million. By the first quarter of 2026, 15 million. Today, it's at 16 million people across 65 countries, growing 123% in a single year. And again, these aren't airdrop farmers. They're people using it to send money home, buy groceries, and hold their savings in dollars so their local currency can't lose value overnight. Then on June 23, 2026, the MiniPay card launched, built with Visa and Gnosis Pay. All 16 million of those users can now spend USDT and USDC at 175 million Visa locations worldwide through Apple Pay and Google Pay, with no monthly fee and cashback paid in Tether Gold. 600,000 people joined the waitlist before it even launched. And here's the key point. A YouGov and BVNK survey of more than 4,600 crypto users across 15 countries found that 79% of them in Nigeria and South Africa already hold stablecoins, and 71% said they would use a stablecoin debit card if one existed. Celo gave them exactly that. Now here's the part most Western crypto coverage misses entirely. Who is Celo actually competing with? For years, the undisputed leader in stablecoins for the developing world was Tron, and Tron is enormous. In 2025, it moved an estimated $7.9 trillion in USDT. It holds over $80 billion of circulating USDT, roughly half of all the USDT in existence. On a typical day, it handles more than 2 million transactions and over $20 billion in volume. Celo didn't beat Tron on dollar volume. Not even close. It beat Tron on something much harder to fake, and that's weekly active users. Celo now has 5 million people a week using USDT and making 7.2 million transactions, which means more individual people use Tether on Celo than on Tron in any given week. Tron serves whales and large transfers. Celo serves the person sending $50 home on a Monday night. Those are two very different kinds of adoption, and the second is far harder to manufacture. So to sum it up, if Tron is already an established stablecoin giant, then Celo is the scrappy startup with unlimited potential. How well they convert real users into real value. That's what's going to make or break Celo's price. But here's the twist. After all of that, none of it actually requires the Celo token. MiniPay users send USDT, spend USDC, and hold CUSD. They pay their fees in those same dollar coins. The very feature that makes Celo feel effortless for a farmer in Lagos paying gas in stablecoins is also the reason the money flowing through Celo's biggest product never touches Celo. The community knows it too. In February 2026, a proposal started making the rounds. Take a portion of what Celo actually earns, use it to buy Celo on the open market, then let governance decide. Burn it or reinvest it. And this thing is already in motion. One analyst called it the single most important governance vote Celo holders will face in 2026. But here's the problem. How much of the fees actually go toward buybacks? Still undecided. What happens to the Celo after? Burn or reinvest? Also undecided. There are 3 things to watch. Keep an eye on these, and you'll see which way the story is turning before most people do. First, how much of that buyback actually turns into a burn? The structure is already in place. Net revenue after operating costs goes toward buying Celo on the open market, which then flows into the community fund. But burning isn't automatic. Second, how far the minimum base fee climbs. After the Jovian hard fork, Celo plans to raise it gradually. not a sudden jump, small enough that users barely notice, spread across 8 to 10 weeks. The real test is whether they can grow protocol revenue without losing the user base. Even a small fee increase at today's transaction volumes could meaningfully move sequencer revenue. Third, how fast the revenue actually compounds. More usage now directly means more revenue, and a big portion of Celo's gas fees are collected in stablecoins like USDT, which automatically get used to buy Celo on the open market. As long as MiniPay users and stablecoin payments keep growing, buy pressure on Celo builds on its own, no extra decisions needed. And that's a wrap on everything you need to know about Celo. Investing is a lens for seeing the future a little early. This was ZHZH Finance.